Hello and welcome to this week's BizSmart Lunch and Learn webinar. Our weekly webinars are aimed to provide advice and share knowledge amongst business owners. This is part of our service to our Smart Room members. If you're not already a member or a BizSmart client and would like to access our archive of webinars, then please visit our website biz-smart.co.uk and go to the Smart Room page. Our host joining me today is BizSmart Select member and BizSmart advisor Jill Hutchinson. But before we start the webinar, can I ask you all to use the question mark function on your screen to post any questions that you may have for Jill, and she will answer them all at the end of the session. Thank you, Jill. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to talk today about content marketing. It's a bit of a buzzword in the marketing industry. I'm just going to explain what it is, why you might want to consider it, and some of the things to think about if you're ready for that step. So essentially, content marketing is about getting away from selling your services or pitching or any of that hard sell that we associate with increasing your customers. It's about providing truly relevant and useful content to prospects and warming them up over time. So you're helping them solve their issues, and it's a softer approach to a sale. So I'm going to start with an example. This is a white paper that we produce because we have quite a few clients in the IT industry. And we send as part of our marketing program some managing directors of IT companies one of these white papers in the post. And it's entitled Why Selling IT Can Be an Uphill Struggle. So it's just a 4-page document, and it outlines some of the issues that these MDs might be finding a bit frustrating with their sales team. And I wanted to share this with you because it's an example of how content marketing can really work quite well. I met this MD over 6 months later, and I was amazed to find he'd actually kept this paper in his desk with a sort of mental note to get hold of us at some point in the future when they were ready. And this was a really clean desk, no clutter office. You know, they didn't keep scraps of paper in the corner like I do in my office. It had just been kept. And he explained that, you know, while we're talking about the sales cycle as part of this MOT we were doing, he was saying, well, that document really talked to me. I really felt it was very personal to me. So he'd read it, he'd enjoyed it, wasn't at the right time, got a case study 6 months later, and he said, right, now I need to speak to Jill about marketing. And it was a good way to illustrate the value of content marketing that's relevant. So here we have a definition of content marketing from a great American institute, the Content Marketing Institute over in the States, and it's a strategic marketing approach which is focused on creating and distributing valuable, relevant, consistent content, bit of a long one, sorry, to attract and retain a clearly defined audience and ultimately to drive profitable customer action. So I'm going to break all this down, so don't panic. But essentially the benefits are increasing your sales. There is a cost saving if you do it properly, and you can save on other things that you're doing with your sales and marketing. And it also develops customers who tend to be more loyal to you and stay with you. So if you go back and read that definition again, but this time read it to yourself and remove the words relevant and valuable. Okay, so if you take out the word relevant and valuable, what you've got is we're sending out lots of informational rubbish you can get from companies trying to sell you stuff, okay? Companies send us information all the time. It's just most of the time it's not very relevant to us and it's not very valuable, okay? So we call that spam, so be careful. Good content marketing needs to differentiate your business, okay? Today's environment, you're getting thousands of marketing messages. Every person gets that every day. It's not an easy or quick fix, content marketing. It's about really making yourself differentiated so that that is valued content. Okay, another little step back. This is a slide that I've used before, and it's about the importance of strategy over tactics. So if you've seen it before, then you're familiar with it, that's great. Essentially, if you get the right business strategy, your business will grow. It might grow slower than you want it to, but it will grow, and it will thrive if you get your strategy and tactics correct. If you start off your business with the wrong strategy, it doesn't matter how good your marketing is, how efficient it is, or how pretty it looks, it ain't going to work. Okay, so I recommend that you have an overall written down marketing strategy, and if you're going for content marketing, a written content strategy. Okay, so park the tactics. Forget about updating your website for now. Don't worry about doing a bit more social media activity. You don't have to produce a new leaflet tomorrow or a new brochure or a new advert. Okay, we're going to stand back, we're going to get the strategy right, and while we're doing that, we're going to consider how we're going to measure and evaluate this process. Think about what success, when we've done it, is going to look like. Okay, don't delegate it or abdicate it to your agency. They are there to advise you, but they are not you. They are not the business owner. They're not part of your senior team. You need to set the direction. Okay, so advise, great. Tell you what to do, no. So the goals you might want to achieve from content marketing might be lead conversion, better lead nurturing, better customer retention rates, better brand awareness, or better brand reinforcement. They're all valid reasons for doing this. But you need to build a financial case, okay? Is this opportunity big enough to warrant spending your time and your money on it? What's the expected return on your investment? And you might want to even put a failure budget aside just in case. Okay. So the ROI will depend on the type, the number, the quality, and the lifetime customer value of the leads you can generate from this process. So quite often people consider this process at the same time as looking at marketing automation tools, and that can help you get better value out of the whole process. But you don't need a marketing automation tool to do good content marketing. And the other thing to consider is whether the content you create can be used in other marketing activity that you're doing anyway. So sometimes you get a benefit from using the same material in different places. Okay, so here's a customer's purchasing process. I've simplified this. There are probably more steps, but we're going essentially from the bottom left, which is people haven't even heard of your brand and making them aware of you, to acquiring a bit more knowledge, a bit more interest in talking to you, and then a point of purchase, a point where they talk to you or phone you or send in an answer to your campaign, or some sort of contact that identifies a person. You might have a sales process at that point, but I'm keeping it simple. So hopefully you'll get a first purchase and then repeat purchases from that process. So our aim with our content marketing, or indeed any good marketing, is to get you on the shortlist of just one at the point of purchase. In other words, you're hoping that your customer will only want to buy from you. But it should be good enough at least to get you onto the shortlist and give you a chance at pitching for this business. Okay, so at the top right you've got the existing customers, and selling out relevant content can encourage them to buy more or buy different products or increase frequency. So don't forget about that, we'll come back to that later. And don't forget there's also a word of mouth marketing effect for your existing customers. Okay, so all these things, once you're in the top half, are more effective than recruiting new customers. It's much better than starting from scratch. Okay, so the first step for your content marketing plan is to map out those processes. What does your customer purchase process look like? And at this point you probably want a big piece of paper or a whiteboard, because you're going to scribble all over it. And you might need a separate process for each persona that you identify. So that's just a fancy word that marketing people use for visualizing somebody they're selling to. So what age are they, what sex are they, what do they do for work, do they have kids, where do they live, all of that thing. And you can call those different people just to have a shorthand for yourself in the business. Okay, so you're going to map out a typical customer purchase process for each one of those. Just start with one, keep it fairly simple. And then think about what sort of information would they need in order to direct them from bottom left to top right. So what information are they going to really find useful and valuable from you? Okay, so that's step one. Step two is to list out all your existing resources. So this is our current business, this is our current position, where are we now? What resources do we have already that can help us tell our story? So we might have a few good landing pages on our website. We might have some relevant blogs that we've already written. We might have some explainer videos that we've already used. And you can look at those resources and say, right, that's great. There's a whole list there to help you of things you can think about. But what could we tweak or change in order to make it better to fit into that content marketing and that purchase journey for the persona we've recognized? Okay, so you might want to tweak your blog a little bit. You might want to tweak your social media strategy so you're using more of one and less of another, or you might want to just revisit an existing one. And then think about, is there anything that you really don't need? Is there any activities you can stop and save some money on? So you might find you could stop using Facebook and start putting your energies into more blogs, for example. Every business has limited resources, and it's fine to pull some activity to fund your content marketing activity. But think about it, think about what's going to be useful to you, and it's fine to stop using the things that are not particularly useful. Okay. So now we have a process, we have a list of resources we can use, and the next stage is to cross-reference those. So set yourself up a big grid with each step of the customer purchasing process and the resources that can fit into each of those steps of awareness and knowledge and desire and so on. Okay, and once you've done that, you should have some gaps. You should be able to identify quite quickly where you need to fill in the gaps or refresh your existing materials. It's quite often useful to think about having both a print version, a hard copy version, and a digital version. So that gives you real flexibility. People might prefer one or the other. Okay, next step then, we have to go about creating our content. And remember, content has to be relevant, valuable, and consistent. Okay, so you need to sense check your your content with your customers. If you can, if you've got customers you know well and you don't mind sharing some of these materials and ask them what they think, that is much better than just you deciding what they need. Only a customer can tell you whether they would find something helpful. So check it out with customers or prospective customers if you can. I know it adds a little bit of cost and a little bit of time and effort. Okay, consistency. So ask yourself, is this content consistent with my overall business vision and my overall business values? If it is, great. We need to be seen as a trusted source of information and not a producer of spam. Okay, so quality resources are much better than quantity. So that's the first thing, consistency with your brand and business vision. And then there's visual consistency. Have you got a written set of brand guidelines which will help users recognize that it is genuine content that's coming from your business and not somebody that looks very similar to you? Okay, so visually, does it look right? And then draw up a plan for creating content. So think about timelines, think about how much resource you have, where you can get information to help you and when that comes out. So if it's a survey, it might be an annual survey, so you need to get that content out as soon as it's reported and so on. Okay, a final word on your management and reporting. Okay, responsibility and accountability are not the same things. So, for example, everybody knows at the moment that people like Facebook and Google and Twitter and YouTube are having problems with their brand image because the content on their site isn't created by them. They don't have control over it. All they can do is police it after the event. Okay? So, similarly, if you're using a junior member of your team or you're outsourcing a copywriter or an agency to produce your materials, you need to be responsible for giving them proper guidance and you need to have a proper sign-off procedure. Okay, you are the policeman for your brand and your business. So great to have people help you with this stuff. You might want to outsource it, you might want to give it to a junior, but retain the control. Okay, you're in charge of the whole process. It's important you check every piece of content before it goes out. Next step then, distributing your content. And there are lots of different ways you can do this. I've listed some on this slide. We tend to think of content marketing as to do with digital. It's not all digital. You can use content anywhere it's relevant. But we tend to start with the website landing pages, blogs, forms to capture that important data about who your visitors have been and what they're interested in. Social media really lends itself well to content marketing, and you can tailor it to where you're going to find most of your prospects. So B2B will generally be Twitter or LinkedIn, B2C would include Facebook and some others depending on who you're trying to reach. But don't forget, email can be linked because it can track and trace digitally. Snail mail, when it's targeted, can be really, really good. An app can be a way of taking people to your website or similar content. And PR, although it's not easy to control, can be another useful way to get your story across. Okay, so all of those are useful ways to reach a specific audience, and it's all about targeting. So to help you target, you might want to try some different things. If you're using email, make sure that you're tracking it. You're looking at open rates and click-throughs. You might want to do some A/B testing where you split your group into two and see which emails give you a better response in terms of click-throughs. Okay, if you're using mail, again, you don't know something's landed because you've only got their hard address, but you'll get feedback in time as to whether that's been more effective at delivering leads. So in the example of my IT company director, he kept that piece of content for a long time, and it was instrumental in getting me to have a meaningful conversation with him. If you want to look at comparing email and mail, you can look at one of our blogs, Why Snail Mail is Better Than Email. You'll find that quite helpful. Okay, so remember that your aim is to be able to measure engagement at some stage and to calculate conversion rates at some stage. So you've got to be able to monitor and measure all your responses. That will allow you to revise your process in time and keep in mind the goals that you're trying to achieve. So those KPIs, lead generation, am I lead nurturing? Are my customer conversion rates improving? Are more people aware of my brand when I go out networking, for example? All these things give you some information that that strategy is working. Okay. In B2B, if we're talking about a B2B world, you tend to be looking at much smaller numbers. And if you've got a system that can track actual visitors to your website, you can actually identify who that is. That is really valuable. You get very personalized data if you can track leads, track when they visited your website, what device they were doing, what they looked at. That's really helpful. B2C, you tend to be looking at numbers and trying to analyze numbers. Okay, and don't forget, you can go back if you want to look about marketing information and marketing automation tools. There is a previous BizSmart webinar on that, how to successfully implement that. Okay, so we've got a whole different assortment of channels to choose from. Well, you've got to choose the right ones that are going to work for you. For each one, come back to the structure. So there's no point having a long essay on Twitter or 140 character on a blog. Okay, so just be sensible. Consider the structure of the channel you're using. Consider the tone of voice and the way you use it. So is it fun? Is it quirky? Business blog will be serious, but you might have a bit more fun on Twitter, for example. Use of videos can be made fun or they can be serious. So how are you talking to them? And bear in mind, what desired action do you want them to do when people see your content? So it could be call you, it could be visit your website, it could be ask for a white paper or a case study, but make sure you track that. So you've got a plan that says, this is the content I've created, this is where it's going to be posted, this is the tone of voice I'm using, and I want them to do X, Y, Z at the end of it. It's quite a lot to bear in mind. And you probably want to test different things to see what works best for you. Lastly, it's about attracting and retaining the right audience. Okay, and we do tend to forget as marketeers the customers we already have. We are really neglectful in general of our existing customers. They're easily forgotten. We put all our efforts into some new sexy process and we forget to look after the ones we have. So designing content that's relevant to existing customers really helps them stay loyal to you and can boost word of mouth recommendation, which is absolutely the cheapest way to find new customers. So don't neglect that top right bit of your customer process. It's important. Don't worry if you do, very, very common, but it's a good idea occasionally to sit back and say, what are we doing for our customers? What content are we creating for them? Don't neglect them. Okay, so the profitable customer action. These are some of the things that you should be considering. Okay, we should be able to compare and contrast the right quantity of new customers. Not too many at once, because we're not going to do a very good job in the sales process and getting them on board. Or not enough and we start to panic and we pursue the wrong ones. Is it the right quality? You'll be able to compare the leads you get through producing different content. So is that content helping you get the quality of lead that you want? Do they convert easily? So you'll be able to see if some channels are better than others. Ask yourself the question, why? Look at those different personas you've created. Are we better at driving content marketing to one of those than others? Do we know why? What's working well? Let's replicate that. Let's tweak the ones that are not working so well. Do some products or services work better than others? Again, have a look at what's happening. Can we answer the question why? Okay, and you've always got other options. So it's really important to keep an eye on your ROI, because you could go out and do some pay-per-click advertising, and even though it's ignored by about 80% of people, the 20% that do look at it might be really good leads. So it might be better for you to spend your efforts doing that than to spend all your effort producing content. There are always choices. Okay, so content marketing is a slower and a steadier animal, but it can help you with long-term building a better ranking website and gaining better quality visitors and hence better quality leads. Okay, so we'll get it right and it will give you a nice quantity, predictable flow of warm leads into your sales funnel. Okay, and you can get out of that feast and famine cycle of too many or not enough. But it is complicated. It does require you to have proper project management, and if it's done well and it can help you with your website ranking and so on, that's fine, that's great, but don't forget there are always other options. This takes a lot of time in terms of your people. You have to develop their skills and you'll have to have a budget to do it. Don't try and do it on a shoestring. It won't work. You need to plan it out properly. So I hope that helps. And if there are any questions, we can take through those now.
Okay.
Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you very much, Jill. Your first question is from Alice, and she asks, what is the best approach if you are on a tight marketing budget?
Okay, so Alice, we're always on a tight marketing budget. Okay, I would suggest the cheapest way to start content marketing, the easiest way to control it, is to start with something like more blogging activity. It's quite easy to plan your articles in advance, and as long as you make sure that they're nice in-depth articles, so sort of 500 words plus, they're fairly easy to create. You don't need to rely on a creative agency to make them look super. You don't need graphic design necessarily, but they're a really good tool to demonstrate the core values of your business, to demonstrate your expertise, to tell stories. You can illustrate those stories with examples, and so it's really good for your SEO. So if you're doing some advertising with pay-per-click and have some SEO, over time you can stop the advertising because the SEO will do the job for you. So in terms of what to do to get started, blogging is great, and Liz Painter did a fantastic webinar about why you should blog as a business owner. If you want to look that up, you'd find that really helpful. And secondly, the measurement. Most people have access fairly easily to Google Analytics. So it's easy to check the numbers of visitors to your website, but don't neglect the behavior. So dive a little bit deeper into your Google Analytics if that's what you're using, and see where people are moving. Which pages are they landing on? Which pages are they moving through? And that will give you some idea of how to build traffic the right way. Or you can invest in a standalone system, something like FastSpace, which will help actually identify the visitors. It's a bit like lead forensics. It helps you with that web tracking function, but it's not as expensive, and it doesn't commit you for a 2 or 3 year financial commitment either. So that's a good place to start and try different things at relatively little expense.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question is from Catherine, and she asks, How often do I need to produce new content?
Okay, I would let the channel guide you on frequency here. So something like Twitter, if you're doing it seriously, Twitter, you should be at least 3 times a day, and hands up, I don't do that. I don't do that myself, so it's just a presence for us. But if you're going to be serious about it, it has to be daily. Blogs, to start with, I suggested you start with blogs for your cheaper option. If you can do 1 or 2 a month, that's great. Ideally, you want to do 1 a week, but that might seem a bit much to start with. And again, people that build businesses just out of blogging and become influencers, and that's their business model, they will blog daily. So that probably isn't for you. Weekly, if you can manage it, 1 or 2 a month. And then think about other content. So blogs are really easy, social media is fairly easy. But have a plan. If you're going to do a new case study, think about which customers you need to talk to and what sectors they're in and what products you sell to them and how you add value to them, so that you cover different aspects of your products or services with your case studies. White papers are really valuable. They take a lot of time to research and quite a lot of time to write. But again, you can plan it in advance, you can work on it, you can test it on a few customers to see what their reaction is. So you might want to do a white paper or case study, say 1 a month or once a quarter, just to build up a bank of resources that will be useful to you as and when as part of your content marketing. And then add whatever else you can afford to do. So videos are fantastic if you can afford it. A brand character is fantastic if you want a bit more fun. And so on, but they're more expensive options. So start with the things you can do fairly easily and you can test and measure fairly easily, and then work up to more expensive things when it's working for you as a strategy.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you again, Jill, for hosting today's webinar. I will be sending out a copy of the presentation and contact details for Jill very shortly, so please do email her direct if you have any further questions. But before we close, just a quick reminder, this webinar is part of our service to our Smart Room members. If you're not already a member or a BizSmart client and would like to access our archive of webinars, then please visit our website, biz-smart.co.uk, and go to the Smart Room page. That's the end of today's BizSmart webinar. Thank you all for listening, and we hope you can join us again very soon.